and welcome back to another video. So I've talked a lot about lighting in the past couple months, and one thing that I've mentioned a lot but I kind of want to do a full deep dive on is lighting for visual effects. Now, I am not a visual effects artist by any means, but I have a lot of movies that need visual effects and that have a lot of effects in them. So what I've really been trying to do is figure out how can I make my effects look really, really good without needing to learn a lot of complex visual effects. And the biggest thing that I found is that lighting is hugely important when it comes to making your effects look good. Let me show you some examples from my work and show how I've been incorporating lighting as a visual effects tool and how you can do that yourself. So this first shot here is from my film The Doorway, which I made a year ago. Now, there's a lot going on effects-wise, and there's a lot going on lighting-wise. So for this scene, the way I had it set up is, as we look at this first frame here, you can see there's the normal lighting on the set. And this is color graded, by the way, but this is without the effects. So if we look at it, we see this light then gets turned on. So I've got someone off screen here. They've got a little RGB panel light that we've set to red. They turn it on as he kind of goes to fire the thing, and then he pans the light over. And so it hits this guy right here. So we're getting so much lighting that's happening in the shot without having to do anything in post. This is just a color graded shot. So there's all this lighting, there's all this stuff that's already going on. And so for this shot in particular, all I had to do, again, this is the exact same shot, exact same color grading, but I've added the effects on top of it, and you get this as a result. Now, it does look a lot different because the effects are doing a lot, but the one thing I didn't have to do is add lighting to it. I just added the effects themselves, and that was it. And so, obviously, this looks very complicated, but it's a lot simpler than it looks. There's a lightsaber effect, there's 2 lens flares, and then there's this beam, which is just using the saber effect in After Effects. All of this was done in After Effects, by the way, and it's not as complicated as it looks. And the lighting is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's making it look as good as it does. And lighting is one of those things that, like, if you're good at visual effects, if you're a great VFX artist, you can make good, convincing lighting in post. But even for great VFX artists, sometimes that's difficult. And so, coming from someone who is not a VFX artist, and I assume you're either an amateur VFX artist or aren't super advanced in your work, by adding lighting on set, it makes your stuff just look a lot better. And it kind of, I don't want to say cheats the system, because in a lot of ways I think this is the best way to do it. Even for experienced VFX artists, I'm sure that they would appreciate having on-set lighting that looks very realistic and that matches what the VFX need to do, because it just helps blend everything together. Now, what if you don't have lights? What if you are just working with a camera, you've got no budget for any lighting equipment or anything, and you still want to do some effects? So this next shot I'm going to show, everything is done in post. There is no on-set lighting, even the shot itself, it's all natural lighting.
Surely we can come to a peaceful solution.
So if we look at this shot, there's a few things that I'm doing to make it look really good. Now, the number one thing is that it takes place during the day. Lighting during the day is a little bit easier because there's so much other daylight that is blanketing the footage, and the VFX lighting doesn't have to do as much and isn't as prominent because there's already so much other light in the scene drowning it out. The second thing I'm doing is, it's a very quick shot. Everything happens super fast, and so it doesn't allow the audience enough time to fully process the effect. And so they can't really tell, like, they can't nitpick it. They can't look at it closely and go, oh, that doesn't look quite right, or, oh, that looks a little weird. So this effect, we look at frame by frame, we look at this frame right here. This is two assets. It's this bolt that's flying right through the middle, and then it's this lens flare that we see coming in. The lens flare is an asset I found on a stock website. I don't know exactly what website it was. Film was made 3 years ago now, and I no longer use whatever stock website that was at the time. And I don't know if I have the original asset, but it's two assets. I'm not doing anything super complicated for this shot. I'm letting this lens flare kind of blow out the image and be just a super like stimulating thing for the audience, and as a viewer, like it really just like overloads your brain, so you again aren't really focused on any of the little details of the shot. And then the bolt effect, I think this one was free. I believe I got this for free online as just like an asset, and I just overlaid it on top. The second shot, I did add a little bit of lighting, and you can see it in this frame right here. If we look on the right side here, you can probably notice it because it doesn't look that good. When we pause the frame here, you can see that there's like a very noticeable amount of this weird like red glow on the guy on the right here, and it doesn't look great, but it's there for 2 frames, so you don't really notice it. But what it does do is it makes it look like this bolt is casting light on him. And then as it goes further away, the light gets dimmer, and then it's gone, and then it's replaced by this lens flare. So this shot is, I believe, I guess technically 3 assets. So the lighting I don't count as one because that was something I did inside of Premiere. I quite literally just took a solid color image, so it basically just makes the whole image red, and then you just mask out the area that you want. So then I cut out just that little area right there, and then I kind of feathered the mask and blended it in to kind of make it look like there's light on him. And then there's the bolt effect yet again. There's a lens flare that's all of these kind of crazy looking things going around here. This is just another stock lens flare asset that I found. And then there's another lens flare when it hits the ground here, and it's just being completely blown out because that's really how it would look. When you think about effects and when you think about the lighting of effects, it's always good to consider what would they really look like on, if you actually filmed this thing. And if I actually filmed a beam of light, a beam of a beam of pure energy, and then that exploding on the ground, it's going to just be completely blown out. There's not going to be a bunch of detail in it. It's just going to be completely blown out and clipped. And this is why, another reason why it looks so good is because I'm just letting it look as it naturally would, instead of trying to be like, oh, well, I want it to have this like cool explosion effect. It's like, no, that's not what it would look like. It's just going to be completely blown out. The exposure would not be right at all for this shot, and this would be the more realistic result of that effect. So that's basically it. I know this is a very brief and short video, but I'm not a VFX artist, so I'm coming at this from an angle of someone who is a filmmaker who sometimes likes to have effects in his movies and is just trying to get them to be passable and good enough so that the viewer doesn't really get distracted or doesn't really notice the effects all that much. So to kind of recap, the biggest thing is if you can add lighting to your scene, do it. Absolutely do it. If you have some sort of RGB lights, whatever it may be, if it can add light to your scene that matches what your VFX are going to be, absolutely add it. If you can't do that, you can try and film during the day, because that's going to kind of minimize the amount, or I guess the effect of the other lighting, because there's just so much light. And then add texture, add flares, add sparks and things to kind of distract the viewer and add more like visual stimulus, so that way they can't just focus on one thing. And then the last thing, make it quick, because sometimes that is the best way to do it. If you're not super confident in your effects, if you can make them very quick, very brief, then again, it doesn't give the viewer enough time to analyze the effect and really be like, oh, that doesn't look right, because it's so quick that their brain doesn't have time. They will process the effect, they will see the thing that happened, and more than likely, they'll see it as you intended them to see it, right? They'll see it in the context of the story. With the blaster effect, they're not looking at the specific details of how I added lighting to one of my characters. They see the blaster and it's gone in 2 seconds, and they're like, okay, boom, you know, and like that's it. That's all they get this like quick blink at the effect. No time to analyze it, no time to scrutinize it, and it just flows with the story. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.